For 5 years, I slept in a separate bedroom while my husband lived like I didn't exist. When I finally left him, still a virgin, he laughed in my face. 6 months later, when I married a billionaire who worshipped the ground I walked on, that same man showed up at my door, begging on his knees. This is my story, and I promise you, karma has never been more real. Before we dive into this unbelievable journey, do me a favor, hit that like button if you believe in karma, and subscribe because you won't believe how this story ends. Trust me, you'll want to see how a man who threw away a diamond realizes too late what he lost. My name is Celeste, and I need to take you back to where this nightmare began. I grew up in a good family, the kind where Sunday dinners were mandatory and education was everything. My father was a pharmacist who built his own chain of drugstores across 3 states, and my mother was a retired school principal. I was their youngest daughter, the one who chose nursing because I genuinely wanted to help people. Life was stable, predictable, and I was happy. Then I met Daniel. Our families knew each other through pharmaceutical industry events. Daniel worked in hospital administration, climbing the corporate ladder with the kind of ambition that impressed my father. He was handsome, well-spoken, and knew exactly what to say to my parents. When he started pursuing me, everyone acted like I'd won the lottery. After a year of dating that felt more like a job interview than romance, he proposed. I said yes because everything looked perfect on paper. And isn't that what we're taught to want? The wedding was beautiful. 300 guests, a dress that cost more than my car, and a reception that had people talking for months. I remember standing at that altar thinking this was the beginning of my fairy tale. Daniel kissed me when the pastor said he could, but it was quick, almost perfunctory. I told myself he was just nervous. That night, our wedding night, I waited in the hotel room, wearing white lace I'd bought specifically for this moment. He came out of the bathroom, looked at me for maybe 3 seconds, and said he was exhausted from the day. He kissed my forehead and went to sleep on the couch. I convinced myself it was just wedding day stress. But then came week 2, and he suggested we sleep in separate rooms temporarily because he had early morning meetings and didn't want to disturb me. Temporary became permanent so gradually that I didn't even notice when it happened. Month after month, I'd try to initiate intimacy, and he'd have a headache, or be too tired, or have an early presentation to prepare for. I bought lingerie that stayed in drawers, with the tags still on. I cooked romantic dinners that he'd eat while scrolling through his phone. I suggested couples therapy, and he said we didn't need it because nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. I was living with a man who treated me like an inconvenient roommate. Year 1 became year 2, then 3. I stopped trying. I stopped wearing pretty things to bed. I stopped hoping. The shame I felt was crushing. How do you tell your mother that you've been married for 3 years and your husband has never touched you? How do you explain to your friends that you're still a virgin while they're talking about their sex lives and marriage problems that seem like dreams compared to my reality? I felt defective, unlovable, like there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made my own husband repulsed by the idea of being intimate with me. I threw myself into work. The hospital became my sanctuary because at least there I had purpose. Patients thanked me, doctors respected my opinions, and I felt like I mattered. At home, I was invisible. Daniel would come home, grunt a greeting, eat whatever I'd prepared, and disappear into his office or the guest bedroom he'd claimed as his own. We were strangers living under the same roof, and the loneliness was suffocating. Year 5, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into his office one night and demanded answers. I deserved to know why the man who promised to love me couldn't even stand to be in the same room with me. His response is burned into my memory forever. He didn't even look up from his laptop when he said it. I married you because our families expected it, Celeste. I never wanted this. I'm not attracted to you. I never was. This arrangement works for me. So I don't understand why you're trying to complicate it now. Arrangement. 5 years of my life, and he called it an arrangement. I stood there feeling like someone had reached into my chest and crushed my heart with their bare hands. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every rejection, every time I'd blamed myself for his distance. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I looked at his phone. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I found it. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I found it. Messages, hundreds of them, with a woman named Amanda from his office. The things he said to her, the passion in his words, the intimacy in their conversations. It was everything I'd begged him for. They'd been seeing each other for over 2 years. 2 years of him telling me he was too tired while he was saving all his energy for her. There were hotel receipts, vacation photos, messages talking about their future together. I felt like I was watching my marriage dissolve in real time. Except I was realizing there had never been a marriage to begin with. When I confronted him, he had the audacity to be annoyed that I'd invaded his privacy. He didn't apologize. He didn't even try to explain. He just said, "You were never supposed to see that. This doesn't change anything between us." That's when I knew I was done. I contacted a divorce attorney that same day. When I told Daniel I wanted a divorce, he looked relieved. He actually smiled. And when I said I was going to find someone who would actually love me, he laughed. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Good luck finding someone else at your age with no experience. What man wants a 30-year-old virgin who couldn't even keep her own husband interested?" Those words were supposed to break me. Instead, they freed me. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment, started therapy, and began the painful process of rebuilding myself. The therapist helped me understand that Daniel's rejection was never about me. It was about him, his cowardice, his inability to be honest. For the first time in 5 years, I started to feel like myself again. I joined a dance class, started working out, bought clothes that made me feel beautiful instead of trying to be whatever Daniel might notice. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, the hospital held its annual charity gala. I almost didn't go, but my supervisor convinced me that I deserved a night out. I wore a deep burgundy dress that hugged curves I'd forgotten I had, and for the first time in years, I felt beautiful. That's when Lawrence Whitmore quite literally crashed into my life. He was carrying 2 champagne glasses, turned to greet someone, and dumped an entire glass down the front of my dress. He was mortified. This tall, distinguished man with silver threading through his dark hair, stammering apologies and trying to dab at my dress with a napkin while I laughed. He insisted on paying for the dress, asked for my number, and said he wouldn't rest until he'd made it right. I gave it to him, not expecting anything. But he called the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, we'd had coffee twice and dinner once, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd smiled so much. Lawrence was everything Daniel wasn't. He asked questions about my life and actually listened to the answers. He remembered small details I'd mentioned in passing. He opened doors, pulled out chairs, and looked at me like I was the only person in the room. When I finally told him about Daniel, about being married for 5 years but never truly being a wife, I waited for judgment or pity. Instead, he took my hand and said, "Then you've never been truly married, Celeste. When you're ready, I'll show you what it means to be loved the way you deserve." We took our time. 3 months of dates, long conversations, learning each other. He never pressured me for physical intimacy, but the way he looked at me made me feel desired in a way I'd never experienced. When he kissed me for the first time, really kissed me, I understood what I'd been missing. This was what it felt like to be wanted. 6 months after we met, he proposed in the rose garden behind his home, and I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small, intimate, just 50 people who actually mattered. But the difference between this wedding and my first was night and day. Daniel had kissed me like it was an obligation. Lawrence kissed me like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment. And that night, our wedding night, he was patient and tender and passionate. And I finally understood what it meant to be truly married. I'd spent 5 years thinking something was wrong with me. But Lawrence showed me that I'd just never been with someone who actually loved me. Life with Lawrence was everything I'd dreamed marriage could be. He didn't just tell me he loved me, he showed it every single day. We made decisions together. He valued my opinions. He introduced me to his business associates with pride, never diminishing my career to elevate his own. We laughed together, traveled together, built a life that felt real and solid and full of joy. I rarely posted on social media, but I shared one photo from our wedding with a simple caption, "Finally found my person, worth every moment of waiting." I didn't post it for Daniel. I didn't even think about him anymore, but apparently, he was thinking about me. 9 months after my wedding to Lawrence, on a random Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, and I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, his suit was wrinkled, and his eyes had a desperate quality that made me take a step back. He started talking fast, words tumbling out like he'd rehearsed them. He was sorry. He'd made a mistake. Amanda had left him for someone else, and he'd realized what he'd lost. He saw my wedding photo, saw how happy I looked, and it made him understand that I was the one who got away. He wanted another chance. We had history, he said. We could make it work now that he understood what mattered. I stood there listening to this man who'd stolen 5 years of my life, who'd made me feel worthless, who'd laughed at the idea of me finding love. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just complete indifference. Before I could respond, Lawrence appeared behind me, his hand settling protectively on my waist. He looked at Daniel with the kind of calm confidence that comes from a man who knows his worth and knows his woman is cherished. Daniel's face changed when he saw Lawrence. The desperation turned to jealousy, then anger. "You moved on pretty fast," he spat at me. "Guess you weren't so innocent after all." Lawrence's grip on my waist tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "She was always innocent, Daniel. You just never deserved her." I found my voice then. "You had 5 years to love me," I said quietly. 5 years to choose me, to want me, to see me. You chose not to. I found someone who actually wants me, who sees me, who loves me the way I deserve. You don't get to show up now and pretend you suddenly realized my value." Daniel's composure cracked. His eyes filled with tears, and he started talking about how seeing me happy was torture, how he couldn't stop thinking about me, how he'd been wrong about everything. He reached for my hand, and Lawrence stepped between us, still calm but immovable. "I think it's time for you to leave," Lawrence said, and it wasn't a suggestion. Daniel looked at me one last time, and I saw it clearly the moment he realized that karma had caught up with him. He'd thrown away a woman who would have loved him forever, and now he had to watch her thrive with someone else. "We had history," he said weakly. I shook my head. "We don't have history, Daniel. We have wasted time, my wasted time, and I'm grateful every single day that I finally stopped wasting it on you." He left. Lawrence closed the door and pulled me into his arms, and I realized I felt nothing but relief. No vindication, no satisfaction, just profound gratitude that I'd chosen myself, that I'd walked away, that I'd given myself the chance to find real love. That was a year ago. Daniel's tried to contact me a few times since then, but I never respond. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's still single, that his career never quite recovered from some scandal at the hospital, that he tells people I was the one who got away. But I'm not the one who got away. I'm the one who escaped. There's a difference. My life now is everything I dreamed it could be. Lawrence and I just celebrated our 2nd anniversary. We're talking about starting a family. I still work at the hospital because I love what I do, and Lawrence supports every decision I make. I wake up every morning next to a man who chooses me every single day, who makes me feel cherished and desired and valued. I wasted 5 years with someone who didn't see my worth, but I refuse to waste one more second dwelling on it. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where someone makes you feel small, unseen, or unworthy, please hear me when I say this. Their inability to see your value doesn't decrease your value. I spent years thinking something was wrong with me, that I was unlovable, that I needed to change or be different to earn basic affection. But the truth is, Daniel's rejection was never about me. It was about him, his cowardice, his inability to love. And the moment I stopped accepting crumbs, I made room for someone who wanted to give me the whole feast. Karma is real, but the best revenge isn't watching someone suffer. It's building a life so beautiful that you forget they even exist. Daniel showing up at my door, broken and desperate, didn't give me satisfaction. What gives me satisfaction is waking up every morning in love with my life and the man I share it with. That's the real victory. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that they deserve better. Subscribe for more real-life stories about karma, justice, and finding your worth. And remember, never settle for someone who treats you like an option when you're willing to make them a priority. Drop a comment and tell me, do you believe karma is real? Because after living this story, I absolutely do. You deserve to be loved, chosen, and cherished.